Welcome to the TOEFL listening section. In this part, you will hear one or more conversations in an academic or campus context, such as a discussion between a student and a professor or between two students. You may take notes while listening. Listen to part of a conversation. You will hear it only once, so listen carefully. After the conversation, you will answer questions about what you heard. Some questions will ask you about main ideas and details. Others will ask about implied meaning, speaker attitude, or how ideas relate to one another. Use both what is stated and what is implied to answer.
Good afternoon, Dr. Collins. Thank you for meeting with me during office hours.
Good afternoon, Emma. No problem. You said you wanted to talk about your paper on trade agreement negotiations.
Yes. The assignment asks me to compare bilateral and multilateral strategies. I understand the basics, but I am struggling to identify the strategic trade-offs in real negotiations.
That is a common challenge. Let us start by clarifying the core differences. Bilateral negotiations are talks between two parties. Multilateral negotiations involve three or more parties or a forum like the WTO.
Right, so why would a country choose bilateral talks when a multilateral forum could reach a wider agreement?
Several reasons. Bilateral deals can be faster and more tailored. A negotiator can extract specific concessions by focusing on issues that matter to the partner country. For example, a country might offer agricultural access in exchange for intellectual property protections in a bilateral exchange.
So bilateral is more targeted. But I read that bilateral agreements can lead to trade diversion and fragmentation. How does that work in practice?
Trade diversion occurs when preferential treatment shifts trade away from more efficient producers outside the agreement to less efficient members. When many bilateral deals overlap, they can create a patchwork of different rules of origin which raises administrative costs and fragments markets.
Rules of origin keep coming up in readings. Could you explain why they are so important in negotiations?
Rules of origin determine which goods qualify for preferential treatment. They are technical but decisive. Tight rules of origin protect domestic industries by making it harder to accumulate inputs from non-members. Looser rules enhance supply chain integration but reduce domestic protection.
That helps. On the multilateral side, what are the main advantages negotiators aim for?
Multilateral agreements can create public goods. They set common standards, reduce the risk of discriminatory treatment, and can lower transaction costs across many partners. They also help smaller countries by giving them coalition leverage they would lack in bilateral talks.
Can you give a real-world example where multilateral strategy mattered?
Consider the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was a large regional agreement intended to set high standards on digital trade and labor rules. When one major participant withdrew, the multilateral dynamic changed, and other members had to decide whether to proceed with fewer parties or seek alternatives.
So the U.S. withdrawal from that deal shows the vulnerability of multilateral talks to domestic politics in key players.
Exactly. Multilateral negotiations often require consensus or large majorities. Domestic political shifts in a single member can stall the entire process.
How about RCEP and the EU single market? Are those examples of successful multilateral outcomes?
RCEP is a regional multilateral agreement that prioritized tariff reduction and trade facilitation among many Asian economies. It shows how countries can pursue incremental liberalization. The EU single market is a deeper form of multilateral integration with strong regulatory harmonization and enforcement.
You mentioned enforcement. Is enforcement a key difference between bilateral and multilateral deals?
Yes. Bilateral deals can include detailed enforcement mechanisms and side agreements like investment protections or state dispute settlement. Multilateral institutions offer broader dispute settlement, but may be slower, and require more complex compliance monitoring.
What negotiation tactics did you see negotiators use in your research?
Common tactics include logrolling, where negotiators trade concessions across sectors, sequencing, where negotiators tackle low-conflict issues first, and side payments that compensate losers within a country. Also, coalition building is essential in multilateral forums.
Could you explain logrolling with an example relevant to trade?
Sure. Country A may concede lower tariffs on machinery while Country B concedes services market access. Each gets gains in sectors they value more. This can be done bilaterally or within a multilateral package.
How do negotiators handle politically sensitive sectors like steel or agriculture?
Often by carving out sectors from liberalization, or by applying phased liberalization. In some deals, negotiators include safeguard clauses that allow temporary protection if imports surge. These mechanisms are bargaining chips in negotiations.
That makes sense. For my paper, I need to weigh strategic outcomes. Is there a rule of thumb for when to prefer bilateral or multilateral strategies?
No universal rule, but considerations include the desired depth of integration, the need for standard setting, distributional politics, and time horizons. If a country needs deep regulatory harmonization and global standards, multilateral is preferable. If speed and precise concessions matter, bilateral can be better.
What about power asymmetries? How do they shape the choice between bilateral and multilateral deals?
Powerful countries often prefer bilateral deals to leverage their market size for more concessions. Smaller countries may push for multilateral platforms to balance power. A middle power may join a regional multilateral agreement to amplify influence.
Are there hybrid approaches negotiators use?
Yes. Sometimes negotiators pursue plurilateral agreements among like-minded parties. Inside a larger multilateral umbrella, they may also layer bilateral side agreements onto multilateral frameworks to handle sensitive issues.
This is very helpful. For my conclusion, should I recommend one strategy over the other or emphasize context?
Emphasize context. Recommend criteria for choosing strategies and illustrate with case studies like the TPP and RCEP. And mention sectoral carve-outs and rules of origin as deciding factors.
Thank you. I will structure the paper around those criteria and include examples of logrolling and safeguard clauses.
Good idea. Also discuss enforcement and political economy factors. If you like, I can read a draft before you submit it.
I would appreciate that. One last question. When you said that larger blocs can set standards that become de facto global rules, what did you mean?
I meant that when large markets agree on regulatory norms, smaller countries and firms often adopt those norms to access the market. That is how multilateral or large plurilateral agreements can shape global governance.
Perfect. I have enough to start writing. Thank you for your time.
You are welcome. Good luck with the paper and bring a draft if you want feedback.
Listen again to part of the conversation. Then answer the question.
When larger blocs negotiate, they can set standards that become de facto global rules.
This concludes the conversation portion. For more TOEFL practice tests and study materials, visit Spinta.org.